Global warming is an apt description for the unambiguous rise in average Earth temperatures witnessed since 1971. The most recent report of the International Panel on Climate Change says it is extremely likely that the human influence has been the dominant cause of this warming, which is driven by the buildup of carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel combustion, cement production, and land use changes. Atmospheric carbon dioxide buildup produces a greenhouse effect that re-radiates some of the thermal wavelengths from the Earth's surface, which would otherwise escape into space, back towards the surface and the lower atmosphere, leading to the increase in average surface temperatures. Adding it all up, scientists estimate the total amount of heat warming the oceans, land, and atmosphere and melting the ice is the equivalent of 4 Hiroshima atomic bombs worth every second. The planet is a big place. The extent of damage all this heat does depends on where the warming occurs. Currently, about 90% is taking place in the oceans, where the primary consequence is sea level rise due to thermal expansion and potentially more powerful and frequent tropical storms. The 2012 paper World Ocean Heat Content and Thermospheric Sea Level Change 0 to 2,000 meters, 1955 to 2010, by Hiatus et al. Points to the fact that over the study's span, to a depth of 2,000 meters, the oceans have warmed by an average 0.09 degrees centigrade. Their average depth is over twice that at 4,267 meters. The Hiatus paper points to the fact that if all of that seemingly small increment of heat was instantly transferred to the lower 10 kilometers of the atmosphere, it would warm on average 36 degrees centigrade, which would spell our demise and that of most other species. Fortunately, that release of heat won't happen anytime soon. By most estimates, it will take 1,000 years from the time we stop adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere for the oceans and the atmosphere to come back into equilibrium. That locks global warming in for an extended period, but permits the equilibration between the atmosphere and the ocean to occur at a sustainable pace. The oceans are huge and can trap huge amounts of heat for decades or even centuries. Mostly that heat has gone into the upper layer to date, mostly to a depth of 700 meters, although increasingly it is being measured below that. The atmospheric surface temperature record since 1997 has essentially remained flat, even as the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has risen. Some have construed this as evidence of a pause in global warming or a hiatus. Matthew England of the University of New South Wales, however, affirms that global warming has not stopped. People should understand that the planet is a closed system. As we increase our emissions of greenhouse gases, the fundamental thermodynamic tells us we have added heat into the system. Once it is trapped, it can go to a myriad of places: land, surface, oceans, ice shelves, ice sheets, glaciers, for example. In his recently published study, he explains how unprecedented trade winds have shifted heat into the thermocline between 100 meters and 300 meters, and that this is the primary cause of the global warming pause. In reality, this pause has only been in relation to the atmosphere, which accounts for just 2.3% of the total. Once the trade winds drop, which is likely to come within years rather than decades, England says the averaged surface temperatures will rise sharply again. In the vernacular, hacking means handling or coping with a situation or an assignment adequately and calmly. A hacker typically is technically adept and delights in solving problems and overcoming limits. Global warming is arguably the most compelling problem this and future generations is likely to face. We can calmly and adequately address it by using the climate pause as a learning experience. The deeper and more permanently we can move heat being trapped in our system into the ocean, the less it can impact the biosphere both in the short and the long term. Currently, heat at the surface of the ocean is causing tropical storms that result in death and destruction, moves heat towards the poles where it melts ice caps, and causes thermal expansion. It is also causing thermal stratification that cuts phytoplankton that are the lungs of the plant and the base of the ocean food chain off from the deep water nutrients they need to thrive. At a depth of 1,000 meters, the coefficient of expansion of ocean water is half that of its tropical surface. The fastest and most efficient way to move large volumes of heat is with a heat pipe. Described as a thermal superconductor due to the high heat transfer coefficients for boiling and condensing working fluids, a heat pipe can move heat at speeds approaching the speed of sound. By inserting a turbine into that flow and attaching it to a generator, you can produce electrical energy. According to the most recent assessment, the oceans have the capacity to produce as much energy as we currently derive from fossil fuels that are the source of the global warming problem. By replacing carbon dioxide emission energy sources by energy from the oceans, we can limit the buildup of carbon dioxide that threatens to produce mass marine extinction events. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry recently characterized climate change as another weapon of mass destruction, perhaps even the world's most fearsome weapon of mass destruction. It is time we hacked that weapon, controlled it, used it to our benefit, and ultimately tamed it.